Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode, and I'm absolutely thrilled today to have with me Darryl Lyons. We're stepping out just a little bit from the hill country, all the way to San Antonio to visit with Darryl. But he graciously agreed to come on, talk about his journey and what he's up to now. Darryl, so first of all, welcome and thank you so much for taking the time to visit with the Texas Hill Country Podcast.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Given the fact that I grew up in Bernie, it feels like home.
Well, let's just start with that. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? And tell us about your professional background after college.
Sure, yeah. I moved around a bit, but spent some formidable years in Bernie. Before it was bigger. It was one sheriff town, and then in the '80s there was that savings and loan crisis. I don't know if you remember that with the oil crashing and banks failing. That hurt our family like a lot of people. And so my mom had my mom had me when she was 16. My dad was 20, so they didn't have a lot of education. So struggling to find their footing financially, we moved down to Harlingen, which is a bit of a culture shock. If people know that area, it's different than Bertie. So I lived there for a little bit, and then we moved back up north. Couldn't find a place in Bernie, so we ended up in a little trailer park on the side of the road in Castroville, Texas. And I was edging the skirting of our mobile home, and I remember thinking, it must be nice. And I wonder how people have nice foundations, because when you edge the skirting of a mobile home, you have to be very careful you don't break the skirting. And so I thought, how do people have houses with foundations? And my friend's dad had a house with a nice foundation, and he was a banker. So my thought was, if I could just be a banker, maybe I won't live in a trailer. So I went to St. Mary's University and got a job at a bank. Worked about 35 hours a week for 4 years at that bank, from a teller to branch manager. Really, put my time in and did my best. I got a degree in accounting, another one in finance. Ended up doing some graduate work as well. Got my degree from A&M in their law school. But I've always been really fascinated and curious about money, not from just a selfish ambition perspective, but how it makes families and lives tick. And so that's a kind of a high level journey through my life.
Well, Darryl, what's your current role?
So I'm the CEO and co-founder of Pax Financial Group, PAX, and we're an investment advisory company in San Antonio. We manage about $600,250,000, and we have 25 employees. I used to sit kneecap to kneecap with thousands of people over the years talking about their personal finances, but since our company's grown a bit, I've moved into a role where I provide vision and strategy, help maintain a culture. We've been one of the best places to work in San Antonio for about 12 years now, so I think we're succeeding there and having a good place to work. We treat our people fairly.
Could you tell us about that transition that you had to make when you moved to the CEO chair to really move away, step away from the day-to-day involvement to those bigger pictures with both culture, strategy, or all three, and vision?
Yeah, I think it first starts with taking inventory of your skill sets, or I had to take inventory of my skill sets. I honestly think I'm in a better place in terms of the way I'm uniquely wired versus being a financial advisor. I did it, and I would say I did it well, but I feel like this role is really the role that I was meant for. I'm not sure everyone, in fact, a lot of peers I talk with, they don't feel the same way. They love being an advisor, and that's kind of what they enjoy doing. So taking inventory of what my skill sets were was the first step, and I felt very comfortable stepping out into that visionary role. But it wasn't an easy transition. I fumbled quite a bit trying to do it. Namely, I fumbled in being able to clearly communicate to my existing clients where I was going, and so transitioning them using the right language, the appropriate hand holding. I think initially, and many of them, I was very abrupt. I said, here's your new person," and walked away, so to speak. And sounds pretty immature. I probably was immature in that approach, and not really being gentle and considerate of the lives that had invested in me. So definitely fumbled through that. A lot of clients were gracious and communicated with me even, hey, yeah, you could have handled that differently. So I learned along the way from my clients and from people, from my advisors, and then became more and more thoughtful about gently transitioning those clients to another advisor whom I trusted. And the retention rate has been way beyond what I would have thought. I mean, nearly all of them transition successfully to these new advisors. And many of them know I'm still available if they need me. But namely, the only time I make myself available if there's something that's kind of gray and they need a judgment call and they just want to bend my ear. Maybe there's more zeros involved. But other than that, the transition of trust, I think, has been accomplished at a high success rate, at least 95% retention.
I'd like to focus on that phrase you just used, the transition of trust, because frankly, I was expecting to hear something along those lines for another group of stakeholders in your organization, your advisors, whether you call them employees, whether you call them whatever you may call them. But you used it with customers. Does that transition of trust also apply internally to Pax Financial? So you had to make that transition when you moved to the CEO chair with regard to advisors and other employees?
It's a good question. Some of which I had to get off my high horse and recognize that, my way of processing information and doing things doesn't mean everyone has to follow me 100%. And so I had to kind of let that go and say, there's other ways to do planning. I was very nuanced in the way I did planning for individuals. My retirement distribution strategy was very particular. And the reality is there's a lot of different ways to do it. And so I had to let go. And so I tell my team the way I think about it today is structured autonomy. So I trust them that they'll never undermine me or never say, Darryl says this, but I do it this way. And I trust that they'll never do that, which would break my heart in a lot of ways. I trust that they'll never steal and they'll always do the right thing. They'll return phone calls within 24 hours. They'll treat people with respect. They'll honor our core values, the basics. But I give them autonomy to do some, use their own unique creativity in the planning process. And so there is trust. Now there is verification. We actually, in terms of quality control, review the advice that's given through an email kind of quality control system. I just don't want ever there to be a what I would consider mission drift, where we start seeing the advice get so far off that it does conflict with our core values. So we do trust but verify. But so far, I think within that structured autonomy environment, it gives the advisors the freedom to be flexible, but at the same time honor what's important to me. And I think that's a win.
So, in terms of, we talked about culture a little bit, and now let me turn to vision and mission. Are those in your mind the same thing? And if they're not, how do you really think about those? Maybe not mission. I think you used the word strategy. What are those? What do those mean to you? And how were you able to sort of grow into those roles?
Yeah, good question. So a vision, I think about kind of an aspirational objective, almost Pollyannic in a sense, something generally parallel to changing the world. So it differs from, goal setting, which is more concrete, smart, specific, measurable, achievable, relatable, and time bound. It's not necessarily that, but it's a vision. Our vision statement is we see families in our communities experiencing hope and living legacies. And so there's an aspirational nature of it, but it's one that does inspire us. And it's on our wall in our hallway. You would see it. We talk about it all the time. It differs from our mission statement, which our mission statement has evolved over the years as we kind of take inventory of where we're at, but it defines kind of the mission that we're on. And so all decisions kind of flow through that mission statement, but it is peculiar. I would say that we have probably one of the more peculiar mission statements. We recognize that generally speaking, our mission had changed because we started out as huge advocates of Dave Ramsey. We were endorsed by Dave Ramsey, the national syndicated talk show host. all over pretty much, I would say, a quarter of the state of Texas, from Fredericksburg down to Karn City, and Del Rio to nearly Houston. So a lot of our mission statement was rooted in the idea that we serve the everyday folk. And it was, it was a good mission statement. But we had since grown to such a place that we were working in a little bit more sophisticated space. So that mission statement didn't apply. So we went to a consultant. We spent a day and a lot of money, maybe 2 days, probably a day and a half, revising our mission statement. We developed one that we all agreed upon, our leadership team. We took it to a peer group, and the peer group said that is absolutely horrible. So my leadership team brought that information back to me as CEO. I noodled on it for a couple of days, and I said, okay, here's our new mission statement. And I said, this is not going to be like groupthink. This is a CEO decision. It doesn't have to be permanent, but we need this mission statement to guide us going forward. They all said, great. What is it, Darryl? What do you got for us? And I said, we exist to. I love mission statements that start, we exist to. It's kind of a phrase I found to be helpful. 1 Timothy 6:17 through 19. And so it's a really peculiar mission statement because it simply reflects a verse in the Bible, a phrase in the Bible. We exist to 1 Timothy 6:17 through 19. And that you can certainly look it up, but those scriptures really define our role in the marketplace. And because much of what we do is helping serve as fiduciaries, the Christian community in their planning process, it really reflects our mission. And so that's our team. Our team said, we're all in. That'll be our mission statement. And so it's been our guiding light going forward for a couple of years.
So you mentioned, and I just want to take it head on, the Judeo-Christian values of Pax Financial Group. Was that, did you guys, you're the co-founder, did you guys co-found Pax Financial with that in mind? Has that evolved or other?
No, it's evolved. Initially, I've always been a Christian my whole life, but we kind of kept it separate. This is our business and this is our faith. So most of what we did was, serve Dave Ramsey listeners really well. That was kind of the job that we had. We started to get a little bit more interested in integrating our faith into the workplace through an organization called C12. They're an international coaching organization that helps businesses and CEOs better understand how to integrate their faith into their work. So they were very helpful in helping us learn how to adopt and integrate our faith into our work. And then it's just been over time, me as a leader becoming more comfortable with that idea. It's, I would think I'm a cerebral guy, so I had reservations and concerns about how that would be perceived. And of course, any hypocrisy that might exist because I'm an imperfect person. So I had to work through all those things. And then we got to a place where ultimately I felt comfortable and our leadership team felt comfortable. And so we've been more overt in such a way that we don't cater exclusively to Christians. We still have very much secular strategies that we use for a secular marketplace, but we do want to be a place that honors and respects Judeo-Christian values, because unfortunately some financial institutions in today's marketplace don't respect Judeo-Christian values. And so we want to be that alternative.
I guess the first question I had is, it seemed like either you had concerns about how you would be perceived in the marketplace, or being able to uphold your own Christian values in a business setting. If those were a fair assessment of what you said, how were you able to answer those, at least for yourself?
It was an event that really was a catalyst. We did this YouTube video where we do a giving challenge where we give money to our employees to give to nonprofits that are important to them. We film it, we put it on video on YouTube, and it inspires other businesses to do the same. So we give them, several $1,000s. They go out, they hand deliver these checks to nonprofits that tug at their heart. It's an inspiring video. I did it. The first one I did, I didn't even remember doing it, but I talked about how much God had inspired me to do this. One of my key clients came up to me afterwards and said, I love that video, but the idea that you talked about God and religion, that just kind of turned me off. And I thought, wow, So the next video I did, I took God out of it completely. I was like, I don't want to offend anyone. So I did the video. It was pure secular in nature. And I watched it, and then I thought, what an idiot. Like that alone is hypocrisy. And in the Bible, it talks about being lukewarm. I go, I'm lukewarm. And the Bible talks about being spit out if you're lukewarm. And so that event kind of said, which way are you going to go, Darryl? Are you going to be lukewarm and kind of vacillate like this your whole life and capitulate anytime somebody gets offended? And I just saw an appetite in the marketplace for somebody to actually stand firm in what they believe in, despite the pushback. And so I felt called to move in this direction, very much hesitantly, several years of vacillating back and forth. But it was that event that kind of put me over the edge and said, I'm just going to lean into this and see where it goes.
So we mentioned the location of your office. As you know, I'm in Kerrville. Do you have clients and customers literally from Kerrville to San Antonio and beyond?
Yeah, we've got clients all over the world. I mean, we have nearly 1,500 households, so we've got quite a bit of band. I mean, I guess clients all across the country, namely. But it being a military city, they get stationed overseas, and we do have an office in Bernie. I love Bernie that much. We put an office there, and it's well received. And your listeners may hear us on Bernie Radio. We're a sponsor of that program and big fans. So we're big Hill Country fans.
Well, Darryl, unfortunately, we're near the end of our time for this episode. But before we leave, I wanted to ask you if our listeners wanted any more information on yourself or Pax Financial Group, what would be the best place or places for them to go?
Our website, paxfinancialgroup.com, PAX financialgroup.com. I have a podcast as well, Retire in Texas. That's a good way to connect with me. LinkedIn's not bad too. A lot of people connect with me through LinkedIn, so I engage there. So those are a couple options for you.
What's the podcast name again?
Retire in Texas. Yeah, I do a weekly commentary on relevant economic issues and try to do it in such a way that it's personal financial planning related, not too techie.
Well, Darryl, I wanted to thank you again for taking the time to visit with me, and I hope we can continue this conversation.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Tom.
This is Tom Fox again. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Hill Country Podcast. If you'd like to be on the Hill Country Podcast and you're a Hill Country resident or even one from San Antonio, we'd love to talk to you. Please give me a shout at tfox@tfoxlaw.com. I hope you'll subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever great podcasts are listened to. The Hill Country Podcast is now the award-winning Hill Country Podcast and is a proud member of the Texas Hill Country Podcast Network.